Weed control and open field tree plantings. Hey Troy, how important is weed control in young tree plantings?
Weed control is critical in young tree plantings. It's about the only way you can control the vegetation that's within your row, short of a weed eater.
And that's a concern because they compete with moisture, they block sunlight, they can absolutely overtake the site if you don't maintain and monitor, correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
So what are the big things to think about when we're starting to develop a weed management or weed control strategy?
So the first thing to think about is how large is your tree planting. If you have a very small site, you may be able to do it with just a weed eater to control your weeds. If you have a medium site, you can probably get away with a backpack sprayer and spraying around each individual tree. But if you get to a large planting, you're going to want to have some sort of mechanized spray setup that'll spray a band down the length of that tree row. It'll allow you to apply your herbicide in quick time and do a much more efficient job of application.
I think the first thing folks and myself need to think about is what exactly is on the site to begin with, right? Because you really need to know your enemy before you can develop an attack plan. Monitoring is critical. You need to know the weeds you're concerned with in order to make an effective strategy. So this is an example of a former ag field that has been properly prepped, and almost a year later, you can see the trees established. Really, no true weed competition, either between the rows or within the rows. Hats off to you, Troy. So there's two critical focal points in tree plantings and open fields. You've got the within row area and the between row area. So a little bit different tactics for each. You want to hit on those, Troy?
Yeah, so the within row is primarily where we're going to use herbicide once the trees are planted. And the between row area is really kind of down to the mower. You're going to mow to control the vegetation in those areas. There's no point in using herbicide on this. So here I'm pointing out the between row versus the in row and what the herbicide does. You'll notice there's a lot more weedy material between the rows, which we're not too worried about. You're going to want to mow your tree rows maybe monthly, something like that. So once the vegetation's about as tall as the trees, you're going to want to go in and mow it off because you want to maintain a visual sight line of where that tree row is. Once they disappear into the weeds, you're not going to find them again.
Yeah. When weeds get tall, be extra diligent about locating your seedlings. They're going to be hard to spot in that dense vegetation. On small sites, a backpack sprayer would do just nicely. This is very advanced. We've got a bucket. Just be very careful when lifting that bucket. You may hit the seedling with herbicide.
Don't you know you're supposed to use the bucket on the stick? That way you don't have to bend over?
I couldn't find my stick today, Troy. Look at that. Perfect. Weed barrier and mulch are other options to prevent weeds and add some moisture control. Just be diligent on returning to the site and removing that weed barrier fabric when necessary. It's really windy. Looking good. Mulch is your friend. Retains moisture, blocks weeds. Do not mound the mulch up. Move the mulch away slightly from the base of the stem to prevent fungus. 2-inch minimum on mulch, as it will degrade over time. Be liberal with the mulch. Monitoring is essential. Hey, look, a tree. Hey, wait a minute. This is not what I planted.
Yeah, get that out of here.
If you're planting trees, weed control is critical. We'll see you in your young woods.